Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't slam the door. She just stood there, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve, and said it like she was commenting on the weather. I just want to be alone for a while. The worst part? She said it while wearing the sweatshirt I gave her for our first anniversary, the one with a hole in the sleeve she swore she'd never throw away. I nodded. That's it. That's all I did. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why now, or what changed. I just nodded, like the words didn't drive a metal rod straight through my chest. She turned, walked into the bedroom, closed the door with the kind of quiet that feels louder than an explosion. So I stayed in the living room. For 2 days, I slept on the couch. I ate cereal with warm milk. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the footsteps from upstairs like they were Morse code for "you're a fool." Then came the nights. 3 of them. At 2:17 a.m., I heard the front door click. At 2:36 a.m., a car engine. Not hers. No explanation in the morning. No guilt in her eyes. Just coffee, mascara, and her usual silence. I decided to match it. I didn't ask who was picking her up. I didn't ask why she started wearing perfume again. I didn't ask who Lena was when she said she was sleeping over at her place. And when she left her phone unlocked on the counter while showering, I still didn't look. Not because I trusted her. Because I was scared I'd be right. She wanted to be alone. Fine. Let her be alone with her secrets. Let her sit in the silence she built, and see if it loves her the way I used to. By day 4, the apartment no longer smelled like us. No burnt coffee. No lavender dryer sheets. Just a hollow sort of stillness, like a hotel room that had already forgotten its last guests. She stopped saying, "Good morning." Not that she said much before, but now she would pass by me in the kitchen like a ghost. She'd brush against the counter, reach for a mug, and sip like she was completely alone in the world. And maybe she was. Maybe I'd already left the relationship without realizing it. But the thing is, she didn't look lonely. That's what started gnawing at me. She looked lighter. There was a bounce in her step when she left for work. I saw it from the window. She never used to walk like that, shoulders relaxed, like a weight had been lifted. It was the walk of someone who wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. Or maybe it was the walk of someone who was seen by someone else. Still, I said nothing. I honored her space. I was a monument to self-control, sitting on the couch every night, chewing through reruns of shows we once watched together like they were cardboard, praying one of them would distract me long enough to fall asleep. Then Friday night came. It was just past midnight when I heard her laugh through the walls. Not a text, not a video. She was actually laughing, giggling, in our bedroom. I froze. The laugh wasn't for me. I hadn't heard that sound in months. It used to be mine. I used to earn it with stupid puns and late-night dance moves in the kitchen when we were both tipsy and in love. I sat up. Then I heard a voice. Not hers. A man's voice. Muffled. Deep. Confident. It wasn't coming from the phone. It was too real. Too present. I moved toward the hallway, barefoot, heart pounding in my throat. But when I reached the bedroom door, there was only silence again. That cursed, familiar silence. The kind that hides things. I stood there for a full minute, hand inches from the doorknob, wondering if opening that door would destroy me, or finally set me free. I didn't open it. I went back to the couch. But that night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared of the truth, but because, for the first time, I knew it was already living inside these walls, and it was wearing my wife's favorite perfume. The next morning, she made pancakes. She hadn't cooked in weeks, maybe months. The scent of maple syrup filled the air like it was a bribe. Like if she could just sugarcoat the room enough, I'd forget the night before. I sat on the couch and watched her move around the kitchen in that oversized t-shirt she used to wear when she actually liked being here. She didn't say a word, just placed the plate on the table and walked away. Not toward me, toward the bedroom, again, where her phone was, where her secrets lived. I stared at the pancakes. I didn't touch them. Instead, I got up, walked outside, and sat in the car. I didn't drive. I didn't even start the engine. I just sat there, windows up, roasting in the summer heat, trying to breathe in a world that suddenly felt like it didn't want me. Then, like an idiot, I started thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if she just needed time, and I've been turning everything into a movie in my head? I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over her contact. I hadn't messaged her in over a week. What would I even say? But I didn't have to send anything. Because that's when I saw it, her location. Still shared from the time we were planning that weekend getaway in the mountains. I'd forgotten it was on. At 11:46 p.m. last night, it had pinned her in a neighborhood across town. Not Lena's. Not anywhere near her usual haunts. A cul-de-sac I didn't recognize. I zoomed in. A random address. I copied it and pasted it into Maps. It was a townhouse. A small, quiet one with a black sedan parked outside. I stared at that screen for 10 straight minutes. I don't know if I was hoping the address would change or if I just wanted to convince myself I was still dreaming. But I wasn't. When I finally walked back into the apartment, she was on the couch, scrolling like nothing happened. Her hair was still damp from a shower. She looked up at me and blinked, like she hadn't expected me to come back so soon. "Did you eat?" she asked. Her voice was soft, normal, like the past week hadn't hollowed me out from the inside. I nodded. Another lie. I wanted to ask her where she was last night. I wanted to scream, demand answers. But instead, I sat across from her and said something I didn't even expect to hear myself say. "I think we should go away this weekend." She looked surprised. "What? Just us? A cabin? No phones? No work? Just space? Together?" She hesitated. A flicker of something crossed her face. Was it fear? Guilt? Excitement? I couldn't tell. But she smiled eventually and said yes. That's when I decided. If I couldn't get the truth from her here, I'd take her somewhere she couldn't run from it. We drove in near silence. She brought snacks, trail mix, and those seaweed crisps she only ever eats when she's trying to look like she's not spiraling. I drove with both hands on the wheel, watching the lines on the road like they were going to give me answers. The cabin was 3 hours away, an old Airbnb we'd stayed at once, back when we still touched each other without hesitation. She didn't ask why I chose that place. She just nodded when I told her the name, then turned up the music like she wanted to drown out the real reason. I'd rehearsed so many things in my head. Questions I was going to ask, traps I was going to lay. But the second we pulled into the gravel driveway and saw that crooked wooden porch, something in me hesitated. She smiled at the sight of it. "It still looks the same," she said, brushing her fingers against the cabin's chipped paint like it was an old friend. I wanted to say you don't, but I bit my tongue. Again, inside, it smelled like pine and old fireplace ash. She unpacked. I watched. Every motion she made was soft, graceful, innocent. But now, even the way she folded her clothes felt like a performance. I kept checking her phone in my peripheral vision, not touching it, just watching it, waiting for it to light up. That night, we sat on the deck with a bottle of wine neither of us liked. I asked her what she'd been thinking about lately. She shrugged. "Work stuff. Just needed to get out of my head for a bit." Then she added, "Thanks for giving me space. Not everyone would have done that." I smiled. I hated that I smiled. "So who do you talk to when you need to be alone?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She blinked, slow. "What do you mean?" I leaned back in the chair. "You said you wanted space, but you didn't really want silence. There's a difference." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Are we really doing this here? I thought this was supposed to be a reset." I tilted my head. "Is that what you needed? A reset? Or a replacement?" There it was. That flash in her eyes. A split-second glitch in her face like her mask slipped, and she had to reboot. She looked down at her glass. "I think we're both tired, Elle." That was her answer. Not denial. Not confession. Just a redirect. A retreat. We didn't sleep in the same bed that night. She said it was too hot in the loft and moved to the couch downstairs. But I knew better. She wanted distance. Even out here, away from everything, she was still running. And me? I lay awake in that creaking, dusty bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a clock with no hands, thinking about how trust doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes. Slowly. Quietly. Like water under wood. And I realized I wasn't here to fix us. I was here to watch what broke. I woke up to the sound of something shifting downstairs. Not loud enough to be alarming, but not soft enough to ignore. It was 4:12 a.m. I know because I checked the clock 3 times like it might change its mind. I lay still for a moment, trying to convince myself it was the wind, a raccoon, the old cabin groaning under the weight of memory. But my gut had already made its decision. I got up quietly, barefoot, heart dull and slow like it was saving its energy for what was coming. The wood under my feet was cold, but my palms were sweating. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I found her on the couch, half asleep, her phone still in her hand, tilted toward her chest like a secret. The glow from the screen lit up her face in soft flashes. Her thumb twitched now and then, like she'd been texting in her dreams. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I stepped closer, slow enough not to wake her, and leaned over just enough to catch a glimpse of the message thread still open on her screen. There was no name at the top, just a gray circle. Anonymous. Safe. The last message read, "He has no idea. I'll call you in the morning." It didn't hit like a punch. It didn't even sting. It just landed, like a final puzzle piece I didn't want to find. I stared at the words until they blurred, until I couldn't tell if the shaking in my hands was rage or relief. Because now, finally, I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't the crazy one holding on to ghosts. I stepped back. The floor creaked under my heel, and she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a second, just a second, there was panic. Then the mask came back. The half-smile. The casual stretch. "Hey," she whispered, like we were just two people escaping the city together. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked back up the stairs. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror until the fog from the shower blurred everything. My reflection looked tired. Not angry. Not broken. Just done. When I came out, she was already packing her things. Said she wasn't feeling well. Said she forgot about a call tomorrow. Said we could always try another weekend. I helped her zip the suitcase. Helped her load the car. Helped her pretend this was normal. And as we drove back to the city, with her scrolling through her phone like I didn't exist, I made a quiet decision. She didn't want space. She wanted freedom. So I'd give her both. But on my terms. The drive back to the city was a 3-hour funeral. She didn't ask why I was so quiet, and I didn't ask what was on her phone. We both knew the answers. She played a podcast. One of those self-improvement ones with a host that sounds like a robot who once read a book on empathy. I watched the trees blur by. It started raining halfway home, soft at first, then heavy enough to drown out everything else. She didn't turn the podcast off. Let the voice and the rain battle for volume. I didn't say a word. When we got home, she kissed me. Just once. On the cheek. Like she was clocking out. Then she walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I heard the lock click. Not that she needed it. I wasn't going in there again. Not anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Named it Archive. I didn't even know what I planned to fill it with yet, but I knew something had shifted in me. I'd spent weeks walking barefoot across eggshells trying not to disturb whatever truth she was hiding. And for what? To be pitted? To be lied to in lowercase? To sit in silence like a well-trained dog while she built a new world just out of reach? No, not anymore. So I started documenting. Not in anger. Not in panic. Just patiently. Like a scientist. Her texts when she left her phone unlocked. The timestamps of her walks. Screenshots of her location history. A list of names I didn't recognize from her contact list. I didn't even know what I'd do with it all. I wasn't trying to catch her. She'd already caught herself. I just wanted the record. Something real. Something solid. Because eventually, she'd rewrite the story. People like her always do. We grew apart. He was distant. I needed something more. And maybe some of that would even be true. But I'd have this. The unedited version. The ugly one. And as I compiled all those pieces, all those fractured moments of betrayal, I started to realize something that scared me more than anything she'd done. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I invented to survive. And now that he was dead, there was no reason to keep pretending she was alive. The strange thing about watching someone lie to you every day is that, eventually, it becomes peaceful, like background noise. I stopped flinching when she smiled at her phone. I stopped checking when she said she'd be late. I even stopped noticing when she forgot to wear her wedding ring. The panic faded. The grief had burned itself out. What was left wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. She thought I was still trying. She thought I was waiting for her to choose me again, to stumble back into the safety of our routine. But I wasn't. I had already disappeared. Quietly. Cleanly. I was a ghost in my own home. The kind that doesn't rattle chains or knock paintings off walls. The kind that just watches and prepares. I started changing passwords. Not hers, mine. Bank accounts. Emails. Streaming services. Anything she had access to, I gently removed her from. No notifications. No warnings. Just slow erasure. One breadcrumb at a time. The joint savings account. Transferred. The emergency fund she never contributed to but always called ours. Moved. I left just enough for the illusion to hold. I started copying files, documents, leases, insurance papers, her driver's license, scanned, her work schedule, logged. I wasn't stalking. I wasn't even angry. I was just organizing a life she didn't know she was about to lose. And I didn't hide it well. I wanted her to feel it, faintly, like static on a radio she couldn't quite tune out. One night, while she was in the shower, I deleted my name from the calendar. We had this shared Google Calendar she never really used, except to mark meaningless dinners or dentist appointments she'd skip anyway. I went in, removed every event with my name, and left hers intact. Then I logged out. The next morning, she looked at me longer than usual. "You okay?" she asked, sipping coffee like it still meant something. I shrugged. Why wouldn't I be? She opened her mouth, closed it, then just nodded. She felt it. Not the end. Not yet. But the absence. The shift. And I made sure it stayed subtle. A few days later, I started sleeping on the couch. Said I was snoring too much. She didn't argue. Didn't even fake a protest. Just pulled the door shut a little harder that night. I watched her fall deeper into the comfort of my withdrawal. She mistook it for resignation. She thought I'd given up. That I was finally too numb to react. But no, I was just making space for her to hang herself with her own rope. And when the final knot was tied, I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't accuse. I wouldn't beg. I would simply walk out of the room and let the echo of everything she threw away follow her forever. The morning I left, it rained. Not the cinematic kind. No thunder, no dramatic sky split by lightning. Just a slow, tired drizzle. The kind of rain that doesn't try to impress anyone. I packed in silence. No duffel bags. No drama. Just the essentials. My laptop, 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, and a hard drive full of memories I no longer needed. I didn't slam a single door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even leave the lights on. She was still asleep. And I realized, standing in that doorway one last time, watching her wrapped in the same sheets where she once whispered promises, that I didn't hate her. Not even a little. I just didn't recognize her anymore. And maybe she never really saw me either. Maybe she loved a version of me that was always meant to collapse under the weight of her silence. But I'd grown in the silence. I'd found stillness, strength, distance. I closed the door gently, the sound of the latch softer than a goodbye. I moved into a tiny apartment across the river. Nothing fancy. One window, a creaky floor, but it was mine. The first night, I sat on the floor eating takeout, watching the rain hit the glass, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Breath. No walking on eggshells. No pretending I didn't see the lies. No waiting to be chosen again by someone who had already left long before I did. Just breath. She texted 2 days later. "You okay?" I stared at the screen for a while. Then I did something she'd never expected. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Not as punishment. But because I didn't know her the version of me who needed closure. I had already found it. In the silence. In the letting go. In the fact that walking away wasn't a loss. It was a return. To myself. It's been 6 months now. I joined a book club. Bought a cheap bike. Started writing again. Nothing major. Just little poems and journal entries. Things that don't need to prove themselves to anyone. Sometimes, I still think about her. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just with gratitude. Because when she said she wanted to be alone, she gave me the chance to finally learn what it meant to be whole. Without her,